Woke Supremacy News.
Tonight on The Readout.
Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal.
New York Attorney General Letitia James lays out a massive fraud case against Trump and 3 of his adult children, accusing them of years of tax cheating and fraud. The lawsuit makes clear that the family's claims of tremendous wealth was always a myth, which Trump himself busted by entering the world's biggest fishbowl, by becoming president of the United States. And that is where we begin tonight with the blockbuster announcement from New York Attorney General Letitia James, who's throwing the book at Donald Trump, his 3 eldest adult children, Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, as well as their company, suing them all for years and years of vast financial fraud.
The pattern of fraud and deception that was used by Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization for their own financial benefit is astounding. Inflating the values of assets by whatever means necessary to increase Mr. Trump's purported net worth.
The 220-page civil lawsuit alleges that the Trumps and the Trump Organization produced more than 200 instances of false and misleading valuations of assets in financial statements from 2011 through 2021. The suit accuses the former president and his business of tax, bank, and insurance fraud and seeks to recover more than $250 million for the state of New York. A.G. James' lawsuit also seeks to effectively run the former president and his grown children out of town as far as business is concerned, permanently barring them from serving as an executive in any company licensed in the state of New York. It caps off a 3-year investigation by Tish James, sparked, as she noted today, by congressional testimony from Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen.
To your knowledge, did the president or his company ever inflate assets or revenues?
Yes.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
And was that done with the president's knowledge or direction?
Everything was done with the knowledge and at the direction of Mr. Trump.
Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes.
But critically, this is a civil lawsuit, meaning there is no potential for jail time here. Although in her highly anticipated news conference today, James announced that her office is also referring her findings to federal prosecutors in Manhattan and to the IRS. And there was another wrinkle today that might get the Trumps scrolling through their little phones looking for whatever lawyers are left over from all the other investigations that they're facing. Well, the ones who will still return their calls or aren't themselves seeking representation. After months of silence and seemingly backing away from the case, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg issued a statement following Tish James's press conference, stating that the criminal investigation in his office is active and ongoing. Former Trump Organization Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg, also named in today's suit, has already pleaded guilty to tax fraud charges in that case. For her part, Attorney General James stressed that no one is above the law.
White-collar financial crime is not a victimless crime. Everyday people cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a favorable loan to buy a home or to send their kid to college. And if they did, the government would throw the book at them. Why should this be any different?
Joining me now is Tristan Snell, former Assistant Attorney General for the state of New York, Tali Farhadian-Weinstein, a former federal and state prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst, Charles Coleman Jr., civil rights attorney, former prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst, and David Farenthold, investigative reporter for the New York Times. An excellent panel. I'm going to start with you, Tristan, though. I've been following you on the Twitters all day, and you've been fiery today. You've had a lot to say, so I want to let you go off here and talk about this. I want to put on the screen what the civil suit against Donald Trump entails, what they want. That's repaying $250 million in what they're saying is illegally obtained money, barring the family from serving on corporate leadership in New York, banning the family from doing business in New York, banning the family from buying real estate in New York for 5 years, banning the family and the business from applying for loans for 5 years, and appointing an independent financial monitor. for no more than 5 years. And I'm going to put up all the properties that are at issue and just let you talk. How significant is this? And does Trump have any defense here? Because this seems like he was doing this in the open for a really long time.
It really looks like the Trump family was running a fraud business with a sideline in real estate, as opposed to the other way around. Like, it actually might have been like disparities in the valuations of their properties may have actually been their biggest source of paper revenue or assets. Like, this is insane. The disparities that we're talking about here are not just 10%. It's not rounding up. It's not saying, oh, you know, this is worth 147 million. We're going to say it's worth 150 million. No. This was 1,000% bigger, 3,300% bigger. If any of us did this, we wouldn't just be liable for fraud. We'd be headed to jail. This would be the equivalent of an American saying that their house, the appraisal says your house is worth $300,000, and then you turn around and say, oh, it's actually worth 30 million. It's actually worth 100 million, and thinking you're going to get away with that. So, yeah, I mean, I could go on for quite a long time about all of this, but the question that you had about, like, you know, exactly what defense does he have here? The problem is that escape hatch is really gone because he had to plead the fifth. The fact that he pled the fifth to 440 different questions means that he doesn't really have any legs to stand on here, because anything that he might say in defense, the AG's office is going to be able to say, well, you already basically admitted to it. Because every time he said, I plead the fifth, substitute the words, I did it, it was me, I confess. And then that's how you... Yeah.
Go on. Finish your thought.
No, that was it. I mean, it really cuts off the escape hatch there. There really isn't a whole lot of room for him to wiggle his way out of this. That's why he tried to settle it. He tried to settle this matter.
And that is another little nugget that came out today that I thought was very interesting, that there was a settlement offer, Charles Coleman, that was put on the table by the Trump side, which the Attorney General said, no, we rejected that. She's like, my door is always open. We weren't trying to settle. And I just wanted to amplify what Tristan was saying. This is it. It's long. It's 200 and something odd pages. I'm not through it all yet. But I just want to go to this nugget here that's inside of this filing. Donald Trump lives, one of the places he lives, Charles, is in Trump Tower, the one that everybody knows, the one on Fifth Avenue. This thing was built in the 80s, like 1987. This is an old building. It's a 30-plus-year-old building. He claimed that his apartment in Trump Tower, which is old, is 10,996 square feet. That's what we know. And he claimed that the apartment was 30,000 square feet and worth $327 million. And that would be $29,738 per square foot. And she says this. The filing says this. That price was absurd, given the fact that at that point, only one apartment in New York City, one, had ever sold for even $100 million at $10,000 a square foot. And to make it worse, there's a building on 57th Street, that tall, super tall building. One of the most expensive apartments in that building, my incredible hairdresser just pointed out to me earlier today, I give Coco the credit for it, that's priced at $250 million now. How could he have possibly gone to any institution, financial institution, and said, no, my old apartment is worth $327 million? Charles, well, how could he defend himself possibly?
Well, Joy, he doesn't have very strong avenues for defense here. There is creative imagination, and then there's criminal belief. And I think that we're looking at the latter in a case like this. I want to point out that it was me on this program before where we had another conversation where I said it may not necessarily be the violent acts or the insurrection or the voter tampering that ends up getting Donald Trump. It may very well be a la Al Capone, something along the lines of wire fraud, tax evasion, or something of that nature. It's not as sexy as some of the other crimes that he's being investigated for, but it is very solid. And I think what we're seeing is Tish James doing what prosecutors do. She noted that this investigation was over the course of 3 years. She talked to over 60 different witnesses. This is fraud that is alleged to have occurred over the course in just this complaint of 10 years. We're talking about an entire decade of misleading federal and state entities around the valuation of his properties and his personal finances. And so when you talk about a legal defense, trust and believe that there is nothing that is in this complaint which has not been thoroughly vetted and checked and investigated. And that's why she could stand up and make the proclamation that she did today in announcing this complaint. And so there is not much that he has to do in terms of wiggle room, further supported by the fact that he tried to settle it, because he also understands that despite the myriad criminal investigations that he's facing, this is a serious issue that he does not have the firepower to contend with.
I've built up one of the greatest companies, and I'm very proud of it, and there's probably nothing like it. Everything I touched turned to gold.
I built an unbelievable business, a great, great business, some of the greatest assets in the world. I built a company that's worth more than $10 billion, okay?
None of that is true. Donald Trump just loves to talk about how rich and successful he is. The myth about his wealth is what inspired his reality show, The Apprentice. And he rode those lies all the way to the White House and into becoming an actual cult leader. But the reality about the former president is, as the New York AG laid out today, that he's nothing but a grifter. In fact, accusations of Trump's financial impropriety go back decades. According to an investigation by the New York Times, in the 1990s, Trump helped his parents dodge taxes and increase his own wealth when, according to the Times, he and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. There are also hundreds of accusations that Donald Trump refused to pay contractors and workers dating back to the 1980s. Then you have Trump's charity foundation. And according to the Washington Post, Trump spent more than $250,000 from that charity to settle lawsuits involving his own for-profit businesses. And of course, who could forget about Trump University, which, spoiler alert, was not a real university at all. The week-long seminar school was designed to teach students the secrets of real estate investing, turned out to be just a massive scam. Even a former employee called it a fraudulent scheme, which seems to be the general theme of Donald Trump's entire career. And the real kicker is, he probably would have gotten away with most of it, if not all of it, if he had never become the president of the United States. Joining me now is David K. Johnston, co-founder and editor of DCReport.org and the author of The Big Cheat, How Donald Trump Fleeced America and Enriched Himself and His Family. What a perfect title, David. You and I have talked about this for years. When he was running, I remember you being on my weekend show, and we talked about the fact that Donald Trump snookered the whole country, including, let's be honest, the media. He used to be on Larry King talking about his billions. He got himself an Apprentice show. This whole conceit that he was a self-made billionaire never was true. It was always a lie. How did he run this game financially against the state of New York for so long?
Well, in this case, where you're dealing with his bank loans, the insurance companies, and tax people, Donald took advantage of the fact that we are not serious in this country about enforcing white-collar crimes.
Yeah.
You rob a bodega with a water pistol, we'll see to it that you go to prison. But you steal the way Donald and his family do, and they are a white-collar crime family, then you get away with it because there's no effort, no serious effort to say to the bankers, are you really complying with the rules? To the insurance companies, how well are you managing those assets that you hold in trust, in effect, for the people who pay premiums to you? And in the case of the property taxes, we've made the system overly complicated, and we don't provide money for governments to address when someone like Donald Trump value something for lending purposes at one price and then pennies on the dollar when he appears for a property tax appeal.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a family tradition. I mean, his father was a tax cheat. He was a tax cheat, inherited this money, changed the value of the properties so that they could inherit money without paying the proper taxes. And here's his children now. This is just about his kids from the New York Times. Since the older ones, Tiffany and Barron are apparently the lucky and smart ones because they ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Since the three joined the business shortly after each graduated from college, lines have a way of blurring. When Donald Trump Jr.'s investment in a concrete paneling business in South Carolina faltered in recent years, leaving him personally responsible for a loan of more than $3 million, the Trump Organization helped bail him out. Before Eric Trump, who oversees Trump golf courses and a Virginia winery, faced questioning in a lawsuit from aggrieved club members in Florida, his father signed a letter saying the unhappy patrons would be out. Ivanka Trump has used the Trump Organization payroll, information technology, and human resources for her separate brand. Her website's domain was registered by the Trump Organization lawyers. I could go on, David. They're all grifters.
Right. Well, this goes back, in fact, even further. Donald Trump's grandfather was a draft dodger from Germany. He built a hotel for what were called sporting ladies on land he didn't own. In other words, he was basically a pimp. And his father ripped off taxpayers. This is a family where they believe it's okay, whatever they do, because they're special. And what Letitia James has done here that's very important is she has said all throughout this suit, Trump knew, Trump directed, Trump went to this meeting, because Donald has traditionally said, I just did what my experts told me to do. And she then shows, here's what the experts told you. This building's worth $200 million. You then claimed it was worth $527 million and said the experts had told you that. She puts this in a place where he cannot deny this. That's why he took the Fifth Amendment when he was questioned, 500 times, something on that magnitude.
He also, he said, William Barr, who we already know is, I will just say, in my opinion, he seems to be quite corrupt and corruptly tried to help the president when Trump was president, going out and saying, leave the children alone. Here's Trump handing his business over to his kids. This is 2017. This is January 2017.
My two sons, who are right here, Don and Eric, are going to be running the company. They are going to be running it in a very professional manner. They're not going to discuss it with me.
Oh, professional manner. In the spring of 2012, prosecutors in the Manhattan DA's office had been building a criminal case against Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump Jr. for misleading prospective buyers of units in Trump Soho, a hotel and condo development that is failing to sell. The evidence included emails from the Trumps making clear they were aware that they were using inflated figures about how well the condos were selling to lure buyers. They're all cheats.
Yes, and in that case, Joy, the profits that Trump got disappeared into an Icelandic bank that was under the control of a Russian oligarch. This is a family enterprise. And, we're not talking about some 18-year-old duped into something. These are middle-aged children, or at least the oldest son is certainly middle-aged. And you either have responsibility or you don't. Donald has tried to suggest that, well, my children, they're young, they're being beaten up on. Well, if it was Barron, I would be with him, but not on this.
Or if it was Tiffany, because she didn't even have respect for Donald Trump. She gets nothing.
Right.
And she's probably very lucky. She should thank her stars that she gets nothing, because being not involved is excellent for you, Tiffany. Trust. David K. Johnston, thank you very much. Before we go, we do have some breaking news in the Trump Mar-a-Lago investigation. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has lifted the hold, barring the Department of Justice from using the classified material seized in their investigation.